This is KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of One Royal Way here on KC Sports Network. I am not Joel Penfield. I'm Jordan Foote hosting today's episode. Joel is away. He's going to be back for next week's show. We're going to talk plenty of MLB draft and stuff like that. Josh Keiser and I, though, have plenty planned for this episode. Josh, what's up, buddy?
Nothing much. I'm ready to record. Talk a little bit about the Royals. Is that what we're doing here? Talking Royals, right? I'm just a little.
We don't have to. We can talk something else.
Okay.
We can talk. There's other local teams, right?
Sure. Let's talk about the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I got thoughts here.
I have none, so
Okay.
It's going to be a one-sided pod.
Okay,
guys,
deal.
if you do want those thoughts, though, might want to follow Josh on Twitter at Josh Keiser 40, right?
Yep, nailed it. Yep.
Okay, cool. Before we get jumped into this podcast, shout out to KC Strength and Conditioning for sponsoring the podcast. There are guys on the Royals that have used them. There are local kids in the area that have trained with them. If you have any needs for baseball, softball training, be sure to check them out. Also, be sure to join us for something I'm pretty excited about. Josh is pretty excited about. Nick, our producer, is pretty excited about. Our second annual Tacos and Bourbon Golf Tournament on July 29th at Sunflower Hills Golf Course in Bonner Springs. There's going to be drinks. There's going to be food brought to you by Holiday Distillery, our good friends there, and Mission Taco, along with prizes, giveaways, a silent auction, and more. Plus, one golfer is going to have a chance to sink a shot for $1 million. They told me I couldn't play because they knew I was going to make the shot. So for more information, that's the reason why. Obviously.
For insurance purposes.
Totally. Yes. For more information on the tournament, sign up. Click on the link below in the podcast description, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or for any other inquiries, additional info, Christian Gumminger at kcsnfoundation.com. Now that we got all that out of the way, the meat and potatoes of this podcast, Josh, we're going to talk about, obviously, the Royals, what's been going on lately, and it probably starts with the most recent series recaps. And I believe we recorded after the game ended or right before it was over last Tuesday. So they beat Detroit. They lost the finale. They split against Tampa Bay. And normally that isn't really much to talk about, but A, because the season's been so bad, B, because it's Tampa Bay, maybe the best team in baseball this year. It was pretty good. So they won 2, they lost 2. We can go game by game, but Josh, did anything like overarching kind of stand out from that series to you?
I kind of commented on this on Twitter, but it seemed kind of like the Rays were going through the motions outside of like Tyler Glass. Now, no, he did not get the memo that it was kind of a straw man series, but it looked like a lot of the Rays were kind of just sleepwalking through it outside of that second game. So as a whole, I think I noticed that, but it does not matter because that is a 2-2 split against a team that is much better than us at this point. So that was the overarching thing, but I got notes for every game. So if we want to take it game by game, we can, but if we don't stick with overarching, that's fine too.
Yep, we can go game by game real quick. So Thursday was a 6-5 win. The Royals really exhausted a lot of pitching in this game. They had Jose Cuas out there. Austin Cox looked really good. Josh has a thread and spreadsheet type thing up on Twitter about Austin Cox so far. We'll probably highlight him maybe next week or the week after. Taylor Clark was used, and Drew Waters had a good game. And really, aside from the pitching, that was what stuck out to me because he hasn't had many, if any, good games outside of that since he got called back up, or I guess reinstated from the IL. He needed that, and the numbers are still not very pretty. But that he was probably the hero of that game, right?
Yeah, doing it from both sides of the field, both on offense and defense. But he had a pretty good series overall in Tampa Bay, so I was really happy with him. MJ also had a pretty good game, 3-4 with 2 ribbies and a walk that game, so on base 4 out of 5 times. But I want to go back to the pitching start of it.
Sure.
9 innings pitched, 5 earned, 10 hits, 3 walks, and 13 strikeouts for that bullpen game. It basically deployed close to exactly how I wanted it to. I wanted Cox to be followed up by Hernandez, and if you're preceding him with Cuas, I kind of understand that reasoning. You got a crafty, weird-angled righty. kind of a soft tossing wizard of a pitcher in Austin Cox, and then a bully in Carlos Hernandez before you start getting those later inning relievers. So it kind of deployed the way I'd kind of like to see those bullpen games used and strategized for. And that was kind of fun to see, even though they did give up, four earned. What did I say? 4 earned, 5 earned.
Yeah. The pitching on Friday was not so good. Zack Greinke, 4 2/3, 9 hits, 7 earned runs allowed. We're going to talk about him more in depth after our first break, probably. Did anything else jump out to you from Friday night?
Other than the Rays got out to an early lead on Greinke. I think it was 4 runs there in the first 2 innings, and the Royals responded to it. They actually got into the point where it was either, it was a 1-run game or tied it up before the 5th inning, and it kind of opened the floodgates. But the Royals answered, and my concerns about this season are them kind of getting lifeless and starting to give up and get frustrated and stuff, and that's not the case, at least against the Rays that game. So I was happy to see them kind of answer that early deficit again.
Yeah, answering on Saturday with a win. 6 innings pitched, 8 hits.
The rarest of wins.
Yes, the rarest of wins, because Jordan Lyles got on the board. Not only did the Royals win a game that he started, snapping the streak from earlier in the year, but he got a W, just like flat out. He's no longer winless at the big league level for the Kansas City Baseball Royals this year. Nick Pratto, Bobby Witt Jr., Freddy Fermin had 2 RBIs, and 3 RBIs respectively. 2 plus 2 plus 3 is 7. So they outscored the Tampa Bay Devil Rays all by themselves. That was the last win of the series, but I thought it was a good team win. And again, people make the joke like rare W. That literally was one of the rarest Ws you could get.
Yeah. And it was good to see. I mean, he did give up 4 earned in those first 2 innings, but after that, he kind of settled in. Only he scattered 3 base runners over the next 4 innings. So you're going to take 6 innings pitched with 4 earned from Jordan Lyles all day, every day. He has had a really, really bad season by all standards, but it was nice to see him kind of, I guess, buck that trend a little bit and try to break that streak a little bit too. You mentioned some of the hitters, but the 6 through 9 hitters in that game particularly, they combined for 9 for 14, 5 runs, 3 ding-dongs, 5 ribbies, 1 walk, and 2 strikeouts. So for some reason, that 6 through 9 spots absolutely carried that offense that game, and it was cool to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're back in town today facing Cleveland, but not before a 3-1 loss on Sunday. And Daniel Lynch had a decent game. It's not his fault. He gave up 1 run over 6 innings. He's really starting to look better and like the Daniel Lynch that we've seen in spurts. Since he came back and got that first one under his belt, he's looked good. And then Taylor Clark, who we'll talk about way later in our surprise game segment. I'm not going to spoil quite yet. He continued to not look great after looking pretty darn good for quite some time.
Yep. It's tough to see that, especially after everybody and their mother thinks that Taylor Clark is going to bring back something in a trade. So it's a really poor time, but maybe he can get back on the right side of the productivity scale there. But yeah, Lynch, very solid again, another quality start. And again, those quality starts are a 4.5 ERA if you kind of scale it out, but it's the idea of keeping your team in the game. And if the offense was not hitting against Tyler Glasnow, who had 12 strikeouts in 5 innings pitched, absolutely dominant against this lineup. So it wasn't Lynch's fault that the offense wasn't up to the task of taking on Tyler Glasnow, but 3-1, 3 runs is absolutely surmountable at that point. So it's kind of on the offense. So good for Daniel Lynch. Glad to see him. He's really the only starting pitcher that we're comfortable with now. That's kind of where I'm at.
And even then, I don't even know if you can quite be comfortable with, you know what I mean? It's
sure,
still
no.
So really they don't have anything right now, which is
they
kind
never
of
have.
Yeah, they never have.
Since
And they
Bubic went down, you can't count on it. But somebody asked that question, which pitcher in the starting rotation currently would you got a do or die situation? Who you picking? It's hands down Daniel Lynch.
Yeah, help might be on the way soon.
Yeah.
That gives us some injury updates. Brad Keller is beginning a rehab assignment at AAA on Wednesday. So as you're listening to this podcast, he's getting ready for that. Michael Massey, not a pitcher, obviously, but he took BP prior to Tuesday's game. He was on the 10-day IL with a hand laceration. And then Josh Staumont had a setback with his neck injury. That's from Andy Rogers. And then Amir Garrett and Ryan Yarbrough continuing their rehab stints. So Josh, obviously, Stallmont probably the unfortunate one of that group. Keller probably the standout in he's been kind of up and down this year, but he would give them theoretically a capable non 2 inning opener type guy out of the rotation.
100%. I think that's the main one. I mean, it is important for Ryan Yarbrough and Amir Garrett to get back up to the big leagues and start building that trade value a little bit, because both of those guys are also free agents at the end of the year, like Keller. So we need to get them in here, give them some innings, let them build up that value if it's going to happen, and then and see what they can come with. But at this point, they just need to not have a bullpen game every 5 days. Like, you wondered, like the Singer last week. Singer started, he had 7 innings pitched, gave up 7 earned runs. It was definitely one of those, like, you're going to give us 7 innings, bruh, and you're going to do it one way or another. And then Kowar's going to finish it, because tomorrow all hell breaks loose and everybody's in. So it would be nice for the bullpen not to have to worry about that every 5 days.
Remember, and we'll move on to Freddy Fermin after this, but remember before the year when people were like, oh man, why are the Royals bringing in Jordan Lyles? They have so many people they need to sort out in the rotation. And then people were saying, like, hey, these things usually sort themselves out. Either one guy sucks or another guy gets hurt. Like, you can never have too much depth. Like, even the Royals, who haven't been completely decimated by injuries, but have had some guys get banged up, it is rearing its ugly head. So remember that in March when that happens.
Didn't Dayton Moore say something like they'd like to have 12 to 13 starting pitchers that can actually start games last year? And that kind of blew my mind, because I never really realized that it was that many, but it makes sense, because that's essentially what it is. So they did not enter the season with 12 or 13 guys that you're comfortable starting a baseball game. So it's interesting. The other interesting thing, last point that I wanted to bring up, was over these last 2 weeks, they had 10 games and they've been 4-6 in those games. It's kind of like a little microcosm of the season, and seeing how thin the line is between winning baseball and losing baseball, because the offense is ranking like 21st in OPS over those last two weeks. Starting pitchers have a second to last in expected xFIP. Relievers are middle of the road in expected xFIP. That's not much different than what their offense ranks on the year as a total. They're 27th in offense. The starting pitcher is 28th, second to last, and then the relievers are just under average at that point. And that's the difference between 4-6 the last 2 weeks and 22-56 is what they currently are. So it's just it kind of shows you like the weirdness of baseball and how everything is such a fluid thing. It just depends on what happens at what time. That's kind of the meaning, or that's more or less the difference between a win and a loss, or at least a 40% winning percentage as opposed to like whatever 22% or whatever it is now. So it's just been a weird 2 weeks, but it's finally, maybe we're getting some of that good luck that we have been waiting for.
I always do this. I have my mic muted.
Sure.
And you almost might want to leave that edit in just to show how much of a dumbass I am. But Maddie Lane does it on the lab, and we have this habit of like muting ourselves while we're trying to make a point, and then proceeding to just bumble over and get faceless expressions. But anyway, it's about depth, a lot of it too. And speaking of depth, the Royals have Freddy Fermin as their backstop. His season numbers here, they look pretty damn good, man. He's slashing 264, 329, 486 with a 121 WRC plus. He's walking 9% of the time, striking out 21% of the time. His isolated power is 222, which is pretty hefty compared to what I expected. 294 BABIP, 4 home runs, and 7 RBIs. In the month of June, he's played 11 games for the Royals. He's batting 333. He has a 147 weighted runs created plus. So I kind of did a deep dive into his Savant page and his defense. Josh, I can see the
Did you steal my notes? Because it's essentially the same thing. Yeah.
We think almost too alike, which is probably a bad thing for the listeners of today's show,
especially
specifically. But what'd you find with him, and how sustainable do you think this plate performance is?
Well, I mean, he had the breakout last year in Omaha that kind of came a little bit out of nowhere. He's not a prospect at that point, so you're just like, I don't know what this is, but let's figure it out. And they decided that it's best for MJ to stay out in the outfield because we got Freddy Fermin, who seems to be major league ready. So it's interesting to kind of see him get the opportunities. But the interesting part is, like you said, his defense rates really well. At this point, he is a top 20 defensive catcher when you kind of filter out guys that have at least 100 innings caught this season. But he's 19th in the frame score on Fangraphs. He's 19th in defensive runs saved. He's 19th in catcher framing runs via Savant. So he's actually getting some decent defensive metrics that is buying him reps, I think, in this team. He needs to be in the lineup regardless. If that's at the DH spot or if that's behind the plate, he needs to be in this lineup at this point because there ain't much. I mean, there's no really anybody else who's deserving at bats more than him at this point, right?
I don't think so. And you look back at the defense, he's also 63rd percentile in pop time to second base on Savant, 76th in percentile in framing. Like, the defense seems legit. That's something that doesn't usually fluctuate a ton. And we've seen a guy like MJ Melendez come up and really just be bad. Like, there's no sugarcoating it. He was just bad. The big improvement for him, I looked kind of more detailed, was on the outside corners of the plate and just really covering the entire plate itself. And even those pitches that just get away a little bit. So Freddy Fermin's defense, that plays as a backup catcher. And people remember Cam Gallagher, who didn't offer much with the bat, but he'd play solid defense. He could play a couple times a week. Like, they didn't lose anything. They might have actually gained something in Freddy Fermin. And you look at his Savant page, the barrel rate's fine. The average exit velocity is fine. All the expected stats are pretty consistent with what he's actually doing. Like, that seems somewhat sustainable. He tattoos off-speed pitches. He has like a 540 slugging percentage against them. He hits the ball right up the middle like 40% of the time. Like, he's going with the pitches that are thrown at him. The two things I noticed for him, he has a 75.8 zone swing percentage, which is higher than any team's average right now. And he swings at the first pitch 50% of the time. And I had to like refresh my page and look again. Like, no, that doesn't sound right. Like, you talk about an ambush approach and like Alcides Escobar, that part gives me a little bit of pause, but then you go back and see he's still walking almost 9% of the time. It seems somewhat sustainable. Like, I think he's more closer to 100 WRC plus hitter. Like, he can be a league average hitter, but if you have that on a backup basis with good defense, you have one of the better backup catchers in baseball. Like, I think he, at worst, is an okay backup and can give you the Cam Gallagher role. And he's kind of an older, an older young player, if that makes sense, considering his service time. But the defense and the ambush approach, but also the maturity when he's not ambushing, he's an intriguing talent.
Yeah, and it makes me kind of wonder. I mean, there's plenty of smoke around Salvador Perez on the trade market here lately. And I mean, MJ Melendez might not be long for this roster, but maybe Freddy Fermin gives you a little bit of freedom, a little bit of wiggle room to potentially deal one of those guys if you think it's time to do so, because then you don't have to really worry about who's going to be the starting catcher or the backup catcher. He's kind of proven to be a major league talent, and it's good to see, because it kind of does provide that flexibility, that option, if it's there, that one of those guys needs to be traded or has the opportunity to be traded at that point. So it's nothing but good. I love to see Freddy Fermin be successful. It's well-deserved.
Yeah, it's definitely something to think about. We're going to give you guys something to think about over the course of this break. We're going to come back and we're going to talk about Zack Greinke.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network. Make sure you download our new app. Find it on the App Store or Google Play. Just search KC Sports Network. Entertain, educate, inform. KC Sports Network.
Welcome back to the One Royal Way podcast here on KCSN. We are back. Jordan Foote, Josh Keiser with you. Shout out to KCSC again, our sponsor for this show. KCSN Golf Tournament, Tacos and Bourbon. It's coming up on July 29th at Sunflower Hills in Bonner Springs, Kansas. There's going to be drinks. There's going to be tacos. There's going to be Bearcat barbecue out there. Chance to win $1 million. Silent auction. A bunch of good stuff. If you're interested in any of that, or potentially, I think we might still be taking a whole sponsor or two. Reach out to Christian Gumminger at kcsnfoundation.com. It's bound to be a good time. Unlike what Zack Greinke's put out on the field lately. I know that's kind of a harsh transition, but a transition nonetheless. The season stats before I open it up to Josh: 5.31 ERA, 4.96 expected ERA, 4.64 FIP, a 6.75 strikeouts per nine, 1.22 walks per nine. Both of those are improvements over last year, but he's allowing 1.66 home runs per nine after less than one last year. The BABIP is down. He's staring at the 3,000 K mark in the distance. Like, it hasn't been great, but you look at a lot of the stuff. The exit velocity's up, the barrel rate's up, the max exit velocity's up, but like the ground ball rate, the fly ball rate mostly consistent, the line drive rate mostly consistent, the walks are down, the strikeouts are up. He's doing a lot of stuff right. Josh, what did you find kind of in your deep dive that he might be doing wrong?
I don't know, man. It's been a roller coaster season for him because he started out kind of fine. He had a pretty solid March and April, and then in May was really good, a 3.83 xFIP, and then in June the wheels just fell off over that 4-game stint, and it was a 4.52 xFIP, and you kind of talked about all those stats could being up and down, but it seems like outside of the home runs, everything else is looking fine. I mean, the K percent's up, the walk percent's down, opponent average is down, WHIP is down, BABIP is down. The home runs is a problem. Well, like you said, 1.66 home run per nine is the ninth highest among starting pitchers. Yes, beneath Jordan Lyles still somehow, but still really, really a big problem. So seeing his words after the post game on Friday, where it was just kind of he was super down about himself. He said that like the stuff's just not there. The command is fine, and the stuff is not there. And that's just losing his confidence was tough to see. He did have a start like that back in April. He actually went less into the game, gave up just as many earned runs in that game, and you didn't see any of those words coming out at that point. So part of me wonders, like, we're halfway through the season. This team has been really bad. The record says they're worse than they actually probably are, but it's just got to be pretty tough for a 39-year-old Zack Greinke to keep getting back on that horse when you just don't have the confidence that you had even entering the season. Like, he was an okay pitcher last year, and you would expect the same. I mean, he is 39 now. He's 38. I mean, if he was going to fall off a cliff, it was going to be last year. He worked out with Driveline, came back, kind of revamped the stuff, and it's just not there. The confidence is not there. So I hope that that's not a thing where he comes to Q in like 3 weeks and is like, man, I'm just done. When Keller comes back, when there's some potential depth coming back, he just decides that it's time to walk away. So I'm super worried about that. It's tough to see Zack Greinke like this, but I still think that there's reason to hope that there is, bit more in the tank than he's actually giving himself credit for at this point.
He was also hurt last year. Like, he had the forearm problem or whatever, and he still was powering through, and he had like the home and away splits, like whatever. He was fine. And you look at his Savant page, the launch angle is consistent last year. The sweet spot is consistent. Like, he's not getting absolutely wrecked on things of his own fault. But then you look at his pitch mix. It's been a little wonky. The four-seam fastball far less, the sinker far more. Those have been positive changes for both pitches. So you're like, okay, that's fine, whatever, in terms of batting average. The curveball, though, has been terrible. Last year, opponents hit 222 against it with 3 home runs and a 347 slugging percentage. This year, 360 with an 800 slugging percentage and 7 home runs allowed. You look at the movement, like a couple percent less vertical movement, a couple percent less horizontal movement, plus 8 run value this year as opposed to -7 last year. You look at the pitch. We looked at the heat maps. Like, I think he's thrown some bad ones over the edge of the zone. I haven't looked pitch by pitch to see which ones have been taken out of the yard, but the heat maps aren't that crazy. It seems like opponents are just taking more swings, and the zone swing percentage is up 5 over last year. So when he throws pitches in the zone, hitters just don't care as much anymore. The meatball percentage is up just a little bit. So he's making a couple more mistakes. Hitters are knowing that if they swing and make contact, it could be hard contact against his soft stuff. And then also the cutter has been bad. The slugging percentage is 622. He's throwing it about half as much I think that's self-awareness kind of kicking in, saying, hey, this isn't working. He insists on throwing the curveball, though. He needs the curveball in order to be successful. And it's been bad. If he scraps the curveball, that almost might be as bad as continuing to throw it, right?
Yeah, I mean, you got to be able to adapt, and nobody has adapted better than, or at least more thoroughly than Zack Greinke over the years. But like you said, that curveball is a problem, which is weird because it looks like the heat maps from 2022 is right down the heart of the plate. Even if it does move, it's a little flatter this year
Yeah.
than it was last year. So maybe there's a little bit something to that. But where he was putting it in the middle of the zone and maybe a little bit down sometimes, but it was right down the middle a lot of the times, you would think that it's the opposite because what he's doing now is still, I mean, on that outside corner, glove side outside corner low, and it's getting lit up. So I don't know really.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe hitters are just like waiting for that. It is 72 miles an hour, so they can floss their teeth, they can tie their shoe, they could do a lot of things before that ball gets there. So if they're kind of waiting for that ball, like they might be, even if it is down the way and really well placed, it could get absolutely crushed. So it's just tough to see. I want to see the adjustments being made. If he needs to, like you said, needs to start throwing it less, then so be it. But that used to be his go-to secondary pitch, his breaking ball. And maybe that's why he's losing the confidence, is because the old go-to, the old curveball is no longer there. That's a problem for confidence. He doesn't know where to turn, but he's got 6 pitches. There should be plenty of room to grow, plenty of room to throw guys off. Just see what you need to do, and we'll see where we are in these next few starts, Zach. Please don't go.
Yeah. His development has not been great this year. We do have some positive updates from the Royals on their pitching development this year. But before that, Will Klein named to the All-Star Futures game for the American League, 3.38 ERA in AA, got called up to AAA, 3.0 ERA, 11 Ks to 4 walks in 6 innings so far with a 1.88 FIP. He's allowed 1 home run all season long in the minor leagues. I just thought, we've shouted out Will Klein quite a bit on this podcast this year, but we all had good receipts on him. We all thought he was going to have a leap, and he's had a leap.
I've been pumped with him, and to see him actually getting that call to AAA means he's throwing strikes. He's not walking guys as much as they needed to see the change, and that seems to be the big. That's how you get promoted, is if you stop walking dudes. So if Will Klein's getting that love, he's ready for the next step in AAA, and hopefully we'll see him in Kansas City the next by the end of the year. I want to stay in Omaha actually for my part of it here, because we've had some great performances, both at bat and on the pitcher's mound. John Rave, Tucker Bradley have absolutely been on fire the last couple of weeks. Rave's got a 1255 OPS through 37 plate appearances with 5 walks and 6 strikeouts. He got that promotion for AA maybe just like 3 weeks ago or something. So to see him kind of hit the ground running in Omaha is huge. And then Tucker Bradley, shout out to our buddy Joel, who just a professional hitter, Tucker Bradley. So to see him putting up a 1,300 OPS and 25 plate appearances over those last couple of weeks, got a 1-to-1 ratio in the walk and K marks. So some great stuff from the outfield there in Omaha. And we mentioned last week, they had that winning streak. And so it's kind of good to see why. And then our other receipts are coming from Alec Marsh, who also got promoted to Omaha in the last couple of weeks. He's got 3 starts, 15 innings pitched, 4 earned, 13 hits, 7 walks, and 19 strikeouts. Our buddy Royals Farm Report said he's got a 35.6% whiff rate right now. That is fun to see. A lot of fun. It was weird to kind of see him in AA last year because strikeouts were there. He wasn't really walking guys, but guys were squaring him up for whatever reason. It doesn't seem to be happening this time around, but he is having some success there early in Omaha. And then Max Castillo, the last 2 weeks, he had 2 starts, 11 innings pitched, 4 earned, 10 hits, and 4 strikeouts, but just a 0.91 whip. So he is another guy that could be working into the mix in the starting rotation at some point. I mentioned last week that he is kind of having a hot start. So good to see him, whether he's in the mix in the rotation or in the bullpen. He needs to be up at some point this season, I think. So it's good to see productivity from all 4 of those guys in Omaha, just one step away from the bigs, baby.
Yeah, the Royals kind of had some moving and shaking in the past couple weeks, and moving guys up from AA to AAA. They also had to make some room at AAA. And Drew Parrish was unfortunately one of the recipients of, hey, you're going to go down to AA and carve some people up. And his last start, 6 innings, 2 hits, 7 strikeouts. That's my shout out for AA. I picked one guy per level because I'm not as cool as Josh. Do you have anybody else for AA?
I don't, but I did kind of figure up the whole farm system today, so we can end with that if you've got some other guys.
Yeah, for sure. I've got Mason Barnett in high
Yep.
A. His last 2 starts, 11 and a third innings pitched, 3 runs, 12 strikeouts, to 6 walks. And then Shane Panzini in Columbia, 10 strikeouts in his most recent start. In his last 4, he has a 2.84 ERA, 19 innings pitched, 27 strikeouts to 9 walks. That's a 3-to-1 ratio. That'll play.
Mm-hmm. And he's kind of the one that gets left out.
Yeah.
There with all that success going on in Columbia this year, Panzini seems to be kind of the one that's the most quietly doing his thing down there. But I've kind of been keeping a running tally all season about what the K rate and the walk rate of the entire pitching up and down the minors this year. Last year, they were 29th in K percentage and 23rd in walk percentage. So far this year, the whole system wide, 6th highest K rate, 14th lowest walk rate. So there are steps being made in minor leagues. They're actually getting guys to strike dudes out. It's good to see. I am pumped to see the strides being made. You jump from the 29th highest K rate to the 6th in just a season. That is huge. That's huge, both in terms of like differentiating the two, but it's also huge for this organization that just absolutely lacked any kind of development of pitching in the past 2 decades. So it's awesome to see them kind of learning how to strike dudes out. I love it.
It's been pretty freaking wild. And the Royals, is it Raising Royals, like the minor league development account that's been on Twitter? They tweeted out the halfway point at each season, 22 and 23. The ERA is down almost half a run. The strikeouts per 9 is up 1 strikeout. The walks per 9, or the ratio, is better. They've tangibly at all levels have had an improvement. And Josh, your tweet thread, even better context to that. The league-wide rankings, not just the Royals rankings. You can jump up and improve year over year, but if you're going from one of the lesser pitching development programs to one that's like okay, that's fine. But if you're going from a bad one in one category to great or top 10 in another, that's even better. So the Royals, people keep saying they want to see tangible progress. They want to see proof that the stuff is working. It's not really skewed one way or another either. Like, yeah, Columbia's had some really good performances. Yeah, Omaha now has. But the guys in Omaha that have the good numbers, they spent a lot of the year in Double-A. Like, they've been bouncing back and forth. The Royals as a whole, shifting their philosophy there, kind of like during COVID when they had the hitting lab, quote unquote, that they put together. It's working so far. So who knows if the major league level is going to work. I know that the record has been terrible and a lot of the processes haven't been great, the results haven't been great, but the processes have generally been good. And you can't just say they're, pissing on your leg and telling you it's raining in terms of the minor league development. Like, they're showing you, hey, this stuff works. And you're having guys that you didn't hear about before this season that are dominating the leaderboard. And you're getting guys like Frank Mazzucato that were top prospects for the org, Alec March, that was one of the better ones. They're showing out. So I think it's mostly all good from that perspective. Yeah.
And I think it's tough to kind of grade the major league at this point based off just basically 3 starts from Chris Bubich and then 4 or 5 from where Daniel Lynch is, and then whatever Singer's going on. I mean, those are 3 guys that you really wanted to see the steps forward. Singer clearly hasn't done it. He's obviously backtracking, it seems. But it seems like Daniel Lynch has taken a step forward. It looked like Chris Bubich was taking a step forward prior to his injury, so we'll see how real that is. But I mean, if we're talking about 2 of those 3 actually turning into something stable in the rotation down the road, then it's a win. Doesn't matter what happens this year.
Yep, 100%. The Royals have some things that are looking up and shaking. We're going to be shaking quite a bit. We're going to play a game after we get back from the second break.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network. Make sure you download our new app. Find it on the App Store or Google Play. Just search KC Sports Network. Entertain, educate, inform. KC Sports Network.
All right,
We're
I'm
back.
the captain now, Jordan.
Uh-oh,
I'm
Josh
the
is
captain now.
Uh-oh.
Look at me. I'm the captain now. Game is my neck of the woods. I'm
Yes,
captain.
it was also your
derailing.
idea.
True, but there's a reason because I just never take anything too seriously here. But tonight we got a game that I'm going to call Deal or No Deal. I'm your host, Maui Handel, that has the rules of the game here. So we were talking about 9 different pairs of guys that you can kind of, put shoulder to shoulder and compare them, have relatively the same value to this team long-term and short-term, but it's no secret that this team is not going anywhere this year. Hard to see them going anywhere next year or the year after that. So at this point, it needs to be about a long game. We need to talk about long-term value. So the deal or no deal aspect is you're going to deal one of these guys and no deal the other guy. You're going to keep the other guy around. And I put the caveat in here that of these 9 pairs, you can sign relative market extensions for 2 of them. So I've got my 2 reserved for my guys. Hopefully you do as well. So that's basically the concept of this game. We'll kind of get the hang of it here as we go. So the first pairing that we have talked about, you can deal one for relative value to restock the farm system and keep the other one around for their long-term value to this team, is Brady Singer and Chris Bubic. With Bubic being injured, Singer not taking any steps forward and potentially regressing. Who you dealing? Who are you no dealing?
So my preface here is I only have one extension out of this group, out of everybody. Okay. I didn't use my second one. I might change my mind, but I'm dealing Brady Singer. Man, I think they're both relative wild cards right now, just because Bubic was hurt and didn't have a big sample size before he got hurt. Singer coming into tonight, a 6.34 ERA with a 1.57 WHIP. He obviously had 6 shutout innings on Tuesday night. That's going to help his season numbers. I think if there's a team out there that thinks they can get that Brady Singer that threw the changeup 3 times and had a bunch of success last year, I think you trade him. I'm not convinced that that is the real Brady Singer. I don't think he can get by not using the changeup or using it sparingly or not using it in high leverage situations. I think he might. I'm not one of those that thinks he has to be a reliever because he only has 2 pitches. I think, though, you're not going to get a consistent number 2 front of the line starter out of him. You might not even get a number 3 or number 4 guy. Chris Bubic, if he is the guy he was before he got hurt, can be a really good number 3 on a good team or like a okay number 2 on a bad team. The Royals can have him be the long-term experiment, like the lab rat almost. I think you deal Brady Singer if you had to pick one of those 2.
I think so too. And I think Singer has the most trade value in that because I think you're more confident if you can't make a starter out of him, he can absolutely play in the bullpen. So there's a floor bullpen role that would still be valuable and still be something other clubs would be interested in as a floor. It's almost like a safety net almost. So I agree. I think that, Bubic has a reputation for being a huge learner and being very coachable. And I would love to see, like you said, a test rat syndrome for Chris Bubic to kind of move forward. So I'm with you. I'm trading Brady Singer. I feel like that's the best way to go here as well. Next one was Kyle Isbell, just recently returning tonight, or Olivares. You got one end of the spectrum with one. You got one end of the spectrum on the other. It seems. So what do you got on that?
Yeah, Isbell can't hit, but is a fantastic defender.
Yep.
Olivares is a league average hitter, it seems, but he can't defend worth a crap. So, I think Isbell 5.3 UZR in the outfield in 2022. It's positive clearly this year. 11 outs above average last year. Had an elite jump. He has 2 options left. He's not 27 till next year. While Kyle Isbell's not an everyday big leaguer, I think he can be like your 5th outfielder, a guy that comes in and is okay base running and can give you some really, really good defense. Edward Olivares, he can't be your outfielder at all. He has fewer options. He's been in the league longer. He's a year older. The defense is very, very bad. I think he's capable of offering, though, and we've talked about a big market team, a New York or a Boston, or maybe like San Diego that wants to spend and get a guy can bring him in. you deal him. I don't think it's really close between those two. I don't think Isbell gets you anything at all. I think Olivares, he might get you something very, very small in return, but something for a guy that just doesn't fit with this team. I don't think that is better than nothing.
I am the opposite. I am keeping Olivares. Yeah, as a big Kyle Isbell guy. I am a big Kyle Isbell guy. I want him to work out and be the everyday center fielder for this team. But I love offense. I don't value defense nearly as much as the Kansas City Royals do. So I would be keeping Edward Olivares on this team to kind of still be able to drive the offense and kind of help out that team that way more so than the defense. See if you can somebody throw out the option of maybe see if he could play first base. I don't know if that's an option, but I mean, if that's what we got to do, beef him up, get him just ripped, get him ripped. So he's only hitting ding dongs every now and then. And then put him over at first base and DH and see how it goes. So I'm the opposite. So here we go. Contentious.
Good.
It's happening.
No, we need that. Yeah.
Yep. Might disagree on this one too. This one's a tough one, I think, but I got Nick Prado and MJ Melendez on the deal or no deal. You got to deal one, keep one. Who you got?
I'm dealing Melendez. It's the same logic as Brady Singer for me. The numbers have been inconsistent. He hasn't proven that he could be the guy that came up last year. He's not making great swing decisions. He's not seeing success defensively. -5 outs above average in the outfield. That was on Fangraphs, so their leaderboard might be a little bit different. Prado's cooled off, and yeah, he's striking out way too much, but I believe in the on-base chops, even if he's not hitting particularly well. I believe in the long-term value with him. Trading Melendez opens up a corner outfield spot for Nick Prado, who could play there when Vinny Pasquantino comes back up. Like, I think for roster building reasons, I think for selling on a guy that is also a Scott Boras client that may not be getting extended by the team anyway.
There's no way.
I think
0%
there's no shot. There's no shot. But I think you trade Melendez, and I feel like you might be in the same boat as me, but I could also see a very easy case for getting rid of Nick Prado too.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I'm keeping Prado basically for the same reasons. Like if they're both like head to head and providing the same offensive value to this team, there's no way that MJ Melendez is providing more defense as a guy who doesn't like defense. But if that's the tiebreaker, then Nick Prado's, I guess his safety net being a better corner outfielder than MJ Melendez is what it is. And I also feel like when Prado's not going well, he's still walking. He's still taking a ton of pitches. And I feel like that is way more workable, way more coachable, way more fixable than when MJ Melendez is just out there flailing at stuff. So I feel like Nick Prado is the guy that we would be then keeping long-term. And boy, I'm extending him. That's my first extension that I would be handing out as Nick Prado, just because I love the fact that he's got that approach that nobody else in this lineup seems to be able to have outside of Freddy Fermin, who is an absolute monster and might be the best player ever made. But Nick Prado, I think, has the most long-term ability to get on base and provide value in the field as well. So I'm extending Prado for whatever it takes relative to the market. The next one might be the hardest one. I think that it would be polarizing among this fan base. And if there is any chance of interacting and getting the fans and the listeners involved in this one, it is this one. We have to deal one of Maikel Garcia or Vinny Pasquantino. What do you got?
I'm extending Vinny Pasquantino to a market value deal. I'm trading Maikel Garcia to a team that thinks they can play him at shortstop or has an opening at shortstop or second base. He hasn't crossed the 200 plate appearance mark at the big league level. Like, he's done everything right. He's hitting the ball hard. He's making decent decisions. He's improving. He looks more mature. It's still super early. Time will tell if he's that level of guy and can be a future 3 to 4 win player every year for a team. I think the time to sell would be now while he's still an intriguing player and still has that prospect kind of new car smell. Almost, has to shine. I could get the logic with trading Pasquantino, but the positional value here, what Pasquantino means to the organization, kind of like in a Salvador Perez way, I think from marketability and being the face of the team and being a leader, the time to trade Maikel Garcia would be much sooner, I think, than the time to trade Vinny Pasquantino.
Yep. And I think, yeah, like you mentioned, I think the trade value might be a little bit more on the Garcia side, not
Yeah.
just because Vinny is injured at the moment and done for the year, but the fact that Michael Garcia is the shortstop, and that's going to always bring back more. And he's shown a capacity to handle third base really, really well. So it's a good problem to have both of these guys on the roster. If I had to choose one, I'm also extending Vinny for all the reasons you mentioned, as well as like on top of everything, he's got the culture of what this organization needs to be centered
Yeah.
around. His number one priority, no matter what, is winning. And that's
Yeah.
exactly what this clubhouse is going to need. I love Salvi to death. I love that he loves baseball. He is the Danny Rojas. Shout out Ted
Yeah.
Lasso. He's the dude, the vibes giver. But I don't know if he is the culture bringer. Like he's
Yeah.
not the winning is everything, like Vinny Pasquantino is. So I think Vinny, just on that part, no matter what he does at the plate, which is also going to be very good, is going to be very important for the rest of the what happens with this team. So
Yeah.
let's move on to the next one. I got Drew Waters versus Michael Massey. What do you got here?
I'm keeping both of them. Neither one's going to bring anything back. Drew Waters has already been traded once. Michael Massey hasn't proven he can hit. Like, we don't have to spend much time on this. Like, I almost voted to skip. Like, this isn't dissing either player, but like, if I had to pick one, I guess Waters, because there's still some prospect intrigue, I guess, like a little bit of the shine, even though he's already been moved. But I just keep both of them. And if they turn out to be good, great. If they don't, then at least you found out.
Man, you Matty answered that.
I
Keeping them
did.
both not part of the
Oh,
answer
yeah.
here. The answer is clearly Drew Waters simply because of his defensive
Yeah.
value in center field over second base. But it's kind of weird how similar they are. Like
Yeah.
what they do at the plate, how they do it, and then they're both very good in the outfield. I mean, or
Yeah.
not in the outfield, but Drew Waters has been pretty good in center field
Defensively.
when he's
Yeah.
got there. Massey has been very well at second base too. So I like both of these guys in the long term, but as far as positional values, if one's got to go, then I'm taking Drew Waters in center field. Let's
Yep.
get down to the minor leagues here. We got Frankie Mazzucato versus not David Cross. I always do that. Gavin Cross. We're not talking about Mr. Show. We're talking about Gavin Cross versus Frankie Mazzucato. What do you got?
It's too early to give up on Gavin Cross, despite hitting 220 with a 31% strikeout rate. He's walking 11% of the time. He's got 10 home runs in 66 games. It's also not too early to trade Frank Mazzucato despite his improvements. A 2.30 ERA, 83 strikeouts, but he's also kept the walks fairly high, 32 and 54 innings. It's very early in his development. You can't count on him as a pitching prospect long term just yet. He's still in Colombia. He hasn't proven it at AA. He hasn't proven it at AAA. If I had to trade one of these two, I think it's fairly easy. You drafted Mazzucato earlier. He's also a pitcher. You also have a little bit of concern with the walks. And that's not to say Gavin Cross doesn't come with concerns, but I think for me, it's a pretty easy. I'm dealing Frank Mazzucato.
I'm dealing Cross.
Okay.
But I understand the difference in, like you said, the walks are a problem. The strikeout is a problem for Cross.
Yeah.
He is also seeing difficult competition and one step above it. So that's a little bit on that side too. But I'm going to deal Gavin Cross. I'm keeping Mazzucato probably purely because of the lack of pitching in the system more so. Let's get through these speed round here. Carlos Hernandez and Will Klein. What are you doing there?
Hernandez. Klein, like at a certain point, you have to keep guys that can help the team long term. And I think Will Klein definitely has that potential. Hernandez, the ERA's down, the walks are down, the strikeouts are up. I'm still not sold on his long term projection. Like, yeah, he can be a bullpen piece, but I think Klein can be better. He's also younger. He also hasn't been called up quite yet. So, like, a lot of the stuff I've said about guys earlier, I'm flipping that for this one. I'm trading Carlos Hernandez.
Okay, I'm keeping Hernandez because he is who Klein could be eventually, in my opinion. But
I like this.
I also
like
really
disagreeing.
like Will Klein too. Yep, 100%.
This is fun.
Last two here: Nicky Lopez or Samad Taylor. Where are you at?
Almost want to default to saying keep both. Trade Lopez to a contender looking for a backup infielder. He can take a walk. He's having the second best offensive season of his career. Not saying much, but
Right.
Positive defender at all three infield positions for him. Taylor has no value. Like, he's already been dealt once. No one knows anything about him. Some people think they discovered him and like he's a great player or whatever, but it's still early. No one really knows, and that's not enough to get anything. Lopez isn't going to bring back much, but I think you get rid of him if you had to pick between those two.
I'm getting rid of him just because I think Samad's going to be able to be better. I think you're getting better
Okay.
defense, obviously, with Nicky, but being Samad Taylor being able to, he has a good understanding of the zone. He's faster than Nicky. He has more pop than Nicky. So I just feel like he could potentially be a little bit more valuable to this team, and he can also play outfield. So I feel like the versatility is also a part of that, but obviously don't want to see Lopez go just for. I like the fact that they both bring something little intangible to the clubhouse as well. If Nicky's the leader and a veteran in that clubhouse right now versus Samad kind of being a spark plug kind of guy, I love both of that. So it's a good thing to have, but I would probably be keeping Samad Taylor more so than trading Nicky Lopez at that point. Finally, the last one, also very close, and I was talking to you about it. It was closer than I actually really thought it would be, but Josh Staumont versus Taylor Clark. Where are you at with those two dudes?
Staumont has always been this like mystery box of like, oh, it could be like Josh Staumont, or oh, it could be Greg Holland or whatever, and then like he gets hurt or he flames out or whatever. Taylor Clark this year was objectively really good for a big chunk of the season. He also seems like, although we've talked about it maybe being fool's gold with him, like more established, ironically, than a Josh Staumont. Staumont's always, or not always, also hurt. I'm trading Taylor Clark because I think that's what makes the most sense. I don't know what Staumont would get back. I don't know where he's at health-wise. I don't know what he is. And that's also a reason to get rid of him, right? But I think you're getting the most bang for your buck, probably, if you trade Taylor Clark, if you get any bang for your buck at all.
Yeah. I'm keeping Staumont more so than trading Taylor Clark because I'm just not sure what Clark's bringing him, but I'd rather have Staumont. I think they're both great pitchers. I love Clark's evolution here, what he's kind of done with his career this year specifically, but I still think Staumont is just more electric. I love his stuff so much. He's gotten that new slider, which was very good prior to getting hurt. So I just love the fact that he was the bully guy with a huge hammer of a curveball, appointment television type of back end bullpen guy. And now he's kind of evolving into a dude that can still pump mid to upper 90s, but he's kind of doing a little bit more shiny, a little bit more deceptively as well. So I'd be kind of curious to see what Staumont can look like a little bit, try to extend that career a little bit more, but the injuries are what they are. So still want to keep both of them. But if I have to deal one of them, it's probably Taylor Clark. So that's where it is. That was the game. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any comments or complaints about it, we don't want to hear them because it's just what it is. No, we'd love to interact. Let us know what you guys are thinking about that game. We can always do it kind of further down the road, but I think that's going to do it here on this episode of One Royal Way. Shout out to Joel. He will join us again next week. Where we'll talk about the MLB draft. We also got probably some first half review to do since we are going to be on the other half of the season at that point. And with it being the 4th of July, we are probably going to push back one day. So I think we're recording on Wednesday night next week. So you might look for us a little bit later. But anything else, Jordan? You got anything else for the listeners tonight?
Nope. That was a damn good outro. Go outside, touch some grass, and yeah, that's all I got.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us again. Hit that like and subscribe button. Help us out with some 5-star reviews, and go Royals.